This could change everything for the Toronto Maple Leafs, as a couple of reports have revealed linking the Toronto Maple Leafs to a few key goaltenders in the trade market. So I'm going to break that down in this episode of Leafs Digest and kind of delve further into what exactly those targets are, as well as discuss Ilya Samsanov officially clearing waivers. So stay tuned for all that and much more in this episode. But before we do, a quick reminder to hit the subscribe button. We notice over 80% of you guys who are watching right now are not subscribed. So scroll down, and if you aren't subscribed, make sure to hit that button. It means the world to me and Darius. And yeah, let's get right into the video today. We have a lot to discuss. There's a lot of Leafs news. There's a lot of, obviously, Team Canada got eliminated today, which is unfortunate. But we're going to focus on the Toronto Maple Leafs today, as a few reports have dropped, a few bits of news has happened. Hopefully you all had a great New Year's. And let's get right into the first topic of the day, which is Ilya Samsanov has officially cleared waivers. Now, we made a video a couple days ago on New Year's Eve discussing basically the fact that the Leafs were done with Ilya Samsonov for now and put him on waivers, at least done in the sense of no longer playing on the Toronto Maple Leafs team. And then it came out yesterday that the Leafs goaltender Samsonov has officially cleared waivers and will report to the Marlies. And essentially what this article kind of dives into is the exact plan for the Toronto Maple Leafs and Ilya Samsonov. And it seems like he's not going to necessarily be playing for the Marlies, at least right now. The path back to the Toronto Maple Leafs seems like a murky one, and that's why we're also going to discuss some potential trade targets in a new article that's been revealed. But basically, what they went on to say is that the mistakes get magnified when you don't make saves. It's the NHL, and we need saves, and we need points, we need wins, all these things. And I'm sure General Manager Brad Treliving is going to consider everything. That's what Sheldon Keefe had to say after another loss. And then Samsonov had allowed 4 more goals in 4 consecutive starts, all losses. We're all familiar with Ilya Samsonov's struggles. He's been off to a very poor start to the season after having a pretty solid season with the Leafs last year, especially in the playoffs against Tampa. But then TSN hockey insider Darren Dreger reported Sunday that Samsonov is not expected to dress well with the Marlies. He will focus on working with the goalie coaches and support staff, and the team will reevaluate when they return from their 3-game road trip. And again, it was his best season as a pro last year. There were some talks that Brad Treliving was going to offer him an extension. They let him go to arbitration, which is one of the best things they could have done, because now they're probably going to let him walk for nothing. And ultimately, his season this so far has been horrible. 5-2-6 with a nearing 4 goals against average. And we all know that the Maple Leafs recalled Dennis Hiddleby on Monday to replace Ilya Samsonov on the roster. And hopefully Hiddleby will be able to do something good out there. I'm very curious to see. He's a young goaltender. He's kind of one of our future goaltenders, pairing alongside Joseph Woll, who's hopefully nearing a return in the next month or so. But I don't know. The Samsonov situation is super weird. It's never been an easy decision. We made videos at the start of the season discussing how, Joseph Woll wanted to be that 1A. He deserved that 1A. But they started with Ilya Samsonov. He was our opening night goaltender, and he had all the runway in the world, especially coming off of a great season last year, a decent postseason against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But it ultimately fell down crashing for Ilya Samsonov, and hopefully he'll be able to turn that around in the future. Maybe he'll be able to fix his mentals, because it seems like a mental thing for Samsonov. We know the skill is there. We know he has the drive to do it. He is just not in a good spot, and continuing to put him out there against NHL teams, against great NHL teams, when your team is in the Maple Leafs and needs to win right now, was only going to hinder his confidence more, and ultimately it deteriorated his confidence to a point where they had to send him down. So I don't know. It makes sense. He cleared waivers. No other team wanted to take a flyer on him, which is not too much of a surprise, but a little bit. You'd suspect that some team maybe would want to take a flyer on a guy who had a great season last year and is decent in the postseason. But that'll, I don't know. It's very interesting. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on that whole situation. I know we've made a bunch of videos on it, but just an interesting thing to discuss. And now we're looking at this could change everything for the Maple Leafs. Now, like I mentioned, Dennis Hiddleby is up with the team. I don't know if he's the permanent solution as that 2B goalie. And then an article came out by The Athletic highlighting the Leafs could be looking to shop for another goalie, whether that's in the free agent market, whether that is in the trade market. And this is a bit of an interesting one, because once Joseph Woll comes back, I feel like you'd be pretty confident with a Woll and Martin Jones 1A, 1B. But at the same time, is that really a cup contending goaltending tandem between those two, given the fact that Martin Jones started off the season in the Marlies? He hasn't really been great. He can be a solid and serviceable backup goalie. But if Joseph Woll, who does not have a lot of NHL experience, yes, he's proved himself to be an NHL caliber goalie, but if he has any bit of cold streak, or if he starts to go back to earth a little bit, the Leafs are going to be in trouble. Great trouble. And they started off the article basically highlighting a few names. We're going to go over each one, and I want you to let me know in the comment section down below which one is your favorite. Now, we're going to start with a bit of a crazy one, which is probably the most unlikely, but it's Jacob Markstrom. The obvious connection here is Brad Treliving. We know Brad Treliving was the Flames GM last season, and then he obviously moved over to Toronto. He signed Markstrom to that rich 6-year contract, which ultimately ended up being a horrible deal, and he still has another 2 years left on that with a $6 million ticket. It's pricey for a guy turning 34. Do the Flames want to sell their starting goalie? And there's a lot of different weird ways. Does Markstrom actually want to go back to, or does Marchand want to come to Toronto? It's not the worst contract in the world. There's obviously worse. I'm not sure if the Leafs would want it. Not that it's necessarily a bad contract. It's just a lot for a goaltender that isn't super. He is elite when he's playing his best, but it's just a lot for a goaltender in general. But do they maybe want to swing big for the fences, work back with Brad Treliving, and work back now with Kyle, with the going back to the Flames and talking to them? I don't know if the Flames GM would want to necessarily work with Brad Treliving, especially on a deal as big as this, where I guess you could presume that he could fix your goaltending problem of the future. But I think when you have Joseph Woll, Dennis Hiddleby, it's not really a deal that is super realistic, especially because he turned 34. And when I say the future, yes, he has 2 more years left on his deal, but then he'll be 36 by the time the contract ends. So he's not our future solution. He's not young anymore. And he's not necessarily the goalie that he always was and used to be. So let me know what your thoughts are on that in the comment section. Let's move on to the next one, which is Jaroslav Halak, who is a free agent. He's 38. This would be more of an interesting one, maybe more of a realistic one. If they don't think Dennis Hiddleby is going to perform well and they don't think that he's out there doing his job necessarily, or they think he's stunting Dennis Hiddleby's development, then maybe they could look for Jaroslav Halak, who is, of course, a very competent goalie. He was great throughout his career a little bit. He had a good stretch there with the Habs, and he's an interesting guy. Has he passed the point? Would he be willing to come aboard as a number 2 or 3? Does it do anything meaningful for the Leafs? That's the question. Would he be better than Ilya Samsanov, who's posting a 4 GAA? Maybe they sign him. They send Hiddleby back down. You do whatever with Samsonov, and then you have a Jones, Jaroslav Halak until you're waiting for Wall to come back. I think if Hiddleby plays well, then there's no instance in which Halak would necessarily be needed. But if he doesn't play well and Hiddleby struggles, then I think there's a point and there's a time where you can maybe look and start to look into the couple of free agent guys, because this would be a 1-year deal. He's 38 years old. He's not someone who's going to be necessarily a game breaker, a game changer for the Maple Leafs, but it could be a band-aid on a problem right now that is pretty evident depending on how the Hiddleby does, especially if they're playing Martin Jones on back-to-back games, because Jones isn't necessarily young either. I believe he's 33 years old. And then this is not the weirdest one. This is probably the most interesting one, which is John Gibson. He's having a great season with the Ducks. He's only 30 years old. He's in the Vezina discussions. Are you, the Leafs, buying the bounce back? Because if you are, you have him for 3 more years. This one is spicy, might be too spicy. This would be a guy that you, in your short window you have now, or however long you consider the Maple Leafs window, if they trade for John Gibson, he would be the goalie for the next 3 years. You'd have Joseph Woll as your backup. That's a very strong tandem. We've seen Gibson be great. We've seen him be bad. This season he's having a resurgence here. He's being very great. And if it would cost a good bit from the Ducks, but if the Ducks are willing to sell on John Gibson, sell high, then it could be an interesting pairing, and then you kind of have the goaltender situation locked down for the next 3 years, and then in the future, as Joseph Woll and Dennis Hiddleby continue to grow, because I feel like right now, if you throw Hiddleby and Woll into the fire for the rest of the season and want them to be the 1A, 1B goalies, you're asking a lot of rookie goalies. You're asking a lot of young guys like Joseph Woll, who hasn't had a ton of NHL experience, playing, I believe, 14 games coming into this season in the NHL with the Maple Leafs. So there's a lot of question marks there. And if you want to play it safe, then maybe you make a trade for John Gibson. It's a pretty pressing need right now, but they also need to address the defense. And would the cost of John Gibson be too much? You'd want the Hawks to obviously eat some salary. So it's very interesting. And the benefit here is that Joseph Woll is not making very much money, only about $766,000 this season towards the cap hit. But that'll wrap up the video. Let me know your thoughts on this whole situation. It's an interesting one. Hopefully the Leafs can go ahead and get some big wins coming up, and this goalie situation will figure itself out. Thank you guys for watching. See you tomorrow.